Jake had always loved the quiet of his mountain cabin. After years of busy city life as a computer programmer, he moved here 6 months ago for peace and quiet. The cabin sat alone on 50 acres of thick forest, miles from the nearest neighbor. Perfect for someone who wanted to get away from everything. That Tuesday night started like any other. Jake was working on his laptop fixing code for a client when a bright flash lit up his entire cabin. The light was so intense it hurt his eyes, even through the thick curtains. Then came the sound, a deep rumbling that shook the walls and rattled every dish in his kitchen. "What the heck was that?" Jake said out loud, pushing back from his desk. He rushed to the window and pulled back the curtain. In the distance, beyond the tall pine trees, he could see an orange glow flickering against the dark sky. Smoke was rising in thick black columns lit up by whatever was burning down there. Jake grabbed his flashlight and headed for the door. Maybe a plane had crashed. Maybe someone needed help. He threw on his hiking boots and jacket, then jogged down the dirt path that led into the forest. The smell of burning metal and something else, something strange and chemical, filled his nose as he got closer. The crash site was about half a mile from his cabin, in a small clearing where the trees had been completely flattened. Jake stopped at the edge of the destruction and stared. This definitely wasn't a plane. The object was about 20 feet long and shaped like a teardrop. Its surface was dark and smooth, almost like black glass, but it seemed to shimmer with colors that moved across it like oil on water. Parts of it were cracked and sparking with electricity that looked purple instead of yellow. Steam hissed from the damaged sections. "Okay, that's not normal," Jake whispered to himself. He should have turned around and gone home. He should have called someone, though who would believe this? Instead, Jake found himself walking closer. The heat from the craft made sweat bead on his forehead even though it was a cold October night. That's when he saw her. About 10 feet from the crashed object, a figure lay motionless in the dirt. Jake's first thought was that it was a person who had been thrown from the craft. But as he got closer and his flashlight beam hit the figure, he realized this wasn't any person he'd ever seen. She, and it was definitely female from her shape, was tall and lean with long limbs. Her skin had a strange quality to it, like it was made of pearl or silver that caught and reflected his flashlight beam. She wore what looked like form-fitting clothing that seemed to be made of the same material as the crashed ship. Jake knelt, down beside her, his heart pounding. Up close, he could see that while she looked mostly human, there were clear differences. Her fingers were longer than they should be, ending in what looked like claws that had been filed down. Her ears came to slight points, and when his light hit her face, he could see that her bone structure was sharper, more angular than any human's, but she was breathing, slow, shallow breaths that told him she was alive but hurt. "Hey," Jake said softly, not wanting to scare her if she woke up. "Can you hear me?" No response. He could see cuts on her arms and what looked like a bad bruise on her forehead. A thin line of blood, though it looked darker than human blood, trickled from the corner of her mouth. Jake looked back at the smoking craft, then at the strange woman lying unconscious in the dirt. Every logical part of his brain told him to walk away, to go home, pretend this never happened, and let someone else deal with whatever this was. But he couldn't do it. Someone or something was hurt and needed help. That's all that mattered right now. "All right," he said, mostly to convince himself. "Let's get you somewhere safe." Jake slipped his arms under her shoulders and knees, surprised by how light she felt despite being almost as tall as him. Her skin felt warm but had a strange texture, like very fine scales instead of regular human skin. As he lifted her, her head fell back and he got a good look at her face. Even unconscious and injured, she was beautiful in a way that made his breath catch, but there was something else too. Something that made the hair on his arm stand up. Even hurt and defenseless, she looked dangerous, like a sleeping wolf. The walk back to his cabin felt like it took forever. She didn't wake up once, which worried him. By the time he reached his front door, Jake was breathing hard and his arms were sore. He laid her on his couch and turned on all the lights to get a better look at her injuries. The cuts on her arms weren't too deep, but they were, bleeding that strange dark blood. The The bruise on her forehead looked nasty. He had no idea if human first aid would even work on whatever she was, but it was all he could do. Jake cleaned her wounds with warm water and antiseptic, then bandaged what he could. She had a fever, though her skin felt different than human. Skin did when hot. All he could do now was wait and see if she would wake up. As Jake sat in his chair across from the couch watching this strange being sleep in his living room, one thought kept running through his mind. His quiet, simple life was definitely over. Outside, the orange glow from the crash site was finally fading. But Jake had a feeling that whatever had started tonight was just the beginning of something much bigger than he could possibly imagine. The woman, or whatever she was, shifted slightly in her sleep and Jake held his breath. But she didn't wake up. Not yet. Jake settled back in his chair for what he knew would be a long night of watching and waiting. Tomorrow, everything would change. But for now, in the quiet of his cabin, he was just a man trying to help someone who needed it. Even if that someone might not be entirely human. Jake woke up in his chair with a stiff neck and the morning sun streaming through his windows. For a moment, he wondered if the whole thing had been a crazy dream. Then he looked at his couch. She was awake. The alien woman sat upright, perfectly, still watching him with eyes that seemed to shift color in the light. Her injuries looked much better than they had the night before, which was impossible, but Jake wasn't going to question it right now. "Good morning," Jake said carefully, not wanting to startle her. She tilted her head slightly like a bird studying something interesting. Then she spoke, and her voice was like music, but not quite human music. "You helped me," she said. Her English was perfect, but there was something different about how she said the words. "Why?" Jake rubbed his eyes and sat up straighter. "Because you were hurt. That's what people do. We help each other." She stared at him for a long moment as if this concept was completely foreign to her. "People," she repeated. "You mean humans?" "Yeah. What are you exactly?" "I am Cathara," she said, and the way she said it sounded proud. "My name is Zara." Jake nodded. "I'm Jake. So, Cathara, that's your species?" "Yes." Zara stood up from the couch in one fluid motion that was definitely not human. She moved like water, or like a big cat. Every movement was controlled and graceful. "We are warriors, hunters. We travel the stars." "And you crashed here by accident?" Zara's expression darkened slightly. "My ship had a malfunction. I was scouting your world for my people." She looked around his cabin, taking in everything. "You live alone." It wasn't a question. "Yeah, I like the quiet. Most of the time. Most humans live in groups and cities. Why are you different?" Jake got up and walked to his kitchen. "Want some coffee, or do you even drink stuff like that?" "I do not know what coffee is." "Right. Alien." Jake started making coffee anyway. "I moved out here because city life was too much for me. Too many people, too much noise. I work with computers, so I can do my job from anywhere." Zara followed him into the kitchen, and Jake noticed she moved without making any sound at all. Her bare feet didn't even whisper against the floor. "You are a hunter, too," she said. "What? No, I'm a programmer. I fix computer code. You hunt problems in the code. You track them down and eliminate them." Zara nodded approvingly. A different kind of hunting, but hunting nonetheless. Jake had never thought about his work that way, but she wasn't wrong. "I guess so." "What do you hunt?" "Dangerous creatures, threats to my people, sometimes other beings who have committed crimes." Zara's eyes seemed to glow slightly as she spoke. "I am very good at what I do." Jake poured himself coffee and offered her a cup. She sniffed it cautiously, then took a small sip. Her eyebrows went up in surprise. "This is pleasant," she said. "Coffee's one of humanity's greatest achievements," Jake said with a smile. "So, are you stuck here? Can your ship be repaired?" "It repairs itself, but it will take several days, maybe longer." Zara looked directly at him. "I need a place to stay hidden while it heals." "Hidden from who?" "Your government would want to study me. My people would punish me for the failure of my mission. Both outcomes would be unpleasant." Jake sipped his coffee and considered this. Having an alien staying in his cabin was probably the craziest thing he'd ever done. But looking at Zara, seeing the way she held herself like she was ready for danger at any second, he found himself wanting to help her. "You can stay here," he said. "But I have some questions." "Ask them." "First, are you going to hurt me?" "No. You helped me when you had no reason to. Among the Kithara, this creates a debt. I am bound to protect you now." "Okay. Second question. Are more of your people coming to look for you?" Zara hesitated for the first time since she'd started talking. "Eventually. But not soon. They believe I died in the crash." "And third, what exactly are you capable of? I mean, what should I expect living with an alien warrior?" Zara smiled, and Jake saw that her teeth were just slightly too sharp to be human. "Would you like me to show you?" Before Jake could answer, Zara moved. 1 second she was standing by the counter, the next she was across the room. She hadn't run. She'd just moved faster than Jake's eyes could follow. "I am stronger than 10 of your strongest men," she said casually. "I can see in complete darkness. I can hear your heartbeat from across the room. I can track a scent for miles." She moved back to the counter just as quickly. "And I heal much faster than humans do." Jake stared at her. That's incredible. Among my people, these are normal abilities. Human senses are very limited." "Thanks," Jake said dryly. "Really boosting my confidence there." Zara looked confused. "I did not mean to insult you. Humans have other strengths." "Like what?" "You helped a stranger without knowing if it would benefit you. Most species would not do this. The Kithara would not do this." She studied his face. "You are interesting, Jake." The way she said his name made something flutter in his chest, which was ridiculous. She was an alien. But there was something about the way she looked at him, like she was seeing something in him that he didn't even know was there. "So what's your world like?" Jake asked, trying to distract himself from how attractive she was. "Harsh, beautiful, dangerous." Zara sat back, down at his small kitchen table. "The Kithara live for the hunt, for the challenge. Our society is built around strength and skill." "Sounds exhausting." "It is the only life I have known." She paused. "But this place is different, peaceful. I can understand why you chose to live here." They spent the rest of the morning talking. Zara told him about her world, about the Kithara culture where the strongest females led and chose their own mates. She described hunts across alien worlds and battles with creatures that sounded like they came from nightmares. Jake told her about human culture, about movies and music and the internet. He showed her his computer setup, and she was fascinated by how humans had created a worldwide network of information. "You hunt knowledge instead of prey," she observed. "I guess we do." By afternoon, Jake realized something that should have worried him more than it did. He liked having Zara around. She was dangerous, sure, but she was also intelligent and curious about everything. She asked thoughtful questions about human behavior and seemed genuinely interested in understanding his world, and there was no denying that she was incredibly attractive. Even though she wasn't human, there was something magnetic about her. The way she moved, the way she spoke, the way she looked at him like he was the most fascinating thing she'd encountered. "Jake," Zara said as evening approached, "may I ask you something personal?" "Sure. Do you have a mate?" Jake nearly choked on his coffee. "A mate? You mean like a girlfriend? Wife?" "Yes." "No, no girlfriend, no wife. Never been married." Jake felt his cheeks getting warm. "Why?" Zara tilted her head in that bird-like way again. "I am trying to understand human bonding patterns. Among the Kithara, a male your age would have been chosen by a female by now." "Well, human dating is more complicated than that." "How so?" Jake found himself explaining human relationships, dating apps, marriage customs, and divorce rates. Zara listened with the intensity of someone studying for a test. "Your system seems inefficient," she concluded. "How do you know if someone is genetically compatible?" Don't really worry about that. We focus more on personality, shared interests, emotional connection. Emotional connection, Zara repeated, like she was trying to understand a foreign concept. Yeah. Love, basically. Love. She said the word carefully. This is when two beings care for each other above all others? That's one way to put it. Zara was quiet for a long moment. Among the Cathara, females choose mates based on strength, intelligence, and genetic compatibility. Emotion is not considered relevant. That sounds kind of cold. Perhaps, but it ensures strong offspring and stable partnerships. Zara looked directly at him. Though I find myself curious about this love concept. Something in her voice made Jake's heart skip a beat. The way she was looking at him had changed over the course of the day. There was an intensity there that hadn't been there before. Zara, he said carefully, why are you asking about all this? Because, she said, I believe I am beginning to understand why you helped me, and I am beginning to understand something about myself that I did not expect. Before Jake could ask what she meant, Zara stood up and walked to the window. She stared out at the forest where her ship was hidden. My ship will be repaired in 3 more days, she said. Then I will have to decide what to do next. Jake joined her at the window. What are your options? Return to my people and face punishment for my failure. Or, she trailed off. Or what? Zara turned to face him, and Jake saw something in her eyes that made his breath catch. It was the look of a predator that had found something worth hunting. Or stay here and explore these new feelings I am experiencing. Jake's mouth went dry. What kind of feelings? But Zara just smiled that sharp-toothed smile and walked away, leaving Jake standing by the window with his heart racing and 1,000 questions he wasn't sure he was ready to have answered. The third day with Zara changed everything. Jake woke up that morning to find her standing in his kitchen, holding his largest knife and examining it with professional interest. This is poorly balanced, she said without looking up. And the edge is dull. Good morning to you too, Jake said, rubbing sleep from his eyes. Please don't critique my kitchen knives before I've had coffee. Zara set the knife down and turned to face him. Something was different about her today. She seemed more tense, more focused. The relaxed curiosity from the past 2 days had been replaced by something that made Jake's instincts prickle with warning. Jake, she said seriously, we need to talk. Those 4 words never led to anything good. Jake poured himself coffee, with hands that were suddenly less steady. Okay, what about? About what happens next. Your ship's ready? Nearly. By tonight it will be fully functional. Zara moved closer to him, and Jake noticed she was wearing different clothes today. Not the strange material from her ship, but some of his spare clothes that somehow looked completely different on her. I have been in contact with my people. Jake's coffee mug stopped halfway to his lips. You've been talking to other aliens? My ship has limited communication capabilities. I sent a message to my commander 3 days ago, reporting that I survived but my mission failed. Zara's expression was unreadable. Today, I received a response. And I am ordered to return immediately for debriefing and reassignment. Jake set down his coffee. Something cold settled in his stomach. So you're leaving tonight? That depends on you. On me? Zara stepped closer, close enough that Jake could see the unusual patterns in her silver-colored eyes. Jake, what I am about to tell you will sound strange even by the standards of the past 3 days. Try me. Among the Cathara, when a female finds a male who interests her, she has the right to claim him as her mate. This claim supersedes all other obligations, including military service. Jake blinked. I'm sorry, what? I am choosing you, Jake, Zara said simply. As my mate. The words hit him like a physical blow. Jake took a step backward, his mind reeling. Zara. What exactly does that mean? It means I stay. It means we become bonded according to Cathara law. It means you become mine, and I become yours. And if I say no? Zara's expression flickered with something that might have been hurt, though it was gone too quickly for Jake to be sure. Then I return to my people tonight and we never see each other again. Jake sat down heavily in one of his kitchen chairs. This was insane. He'd known this woman, this alien, for 3 days. Sure, he was attracted to her. Sure, he enjoyed talking with her. But this? Zara, this is crazy. People don't decide to spend their lives together after 3 days. Humans don't, she corrected. Kithara do. We are efficient in our decision-making. But I'm not Kithara. No, Zara agreed. You are something far more interesting. She knelt down beside his chair, bringing them to eye level. When she spoke, her voice was softer than he'd ever heard it. Jake, in 3 days with you, I have experienced more curiosity, more contentment than in years among my own people. You make me want to understand things I have never cared about before. You make me want to be gentle instead of fierce. That doesn't sound like you. Exactly. You are changing me, and I do not understand how or why. Among the Kithara, this is considered a sign of genetic and spiritual compatibility. Jake looked into her eyes. Those strange, beautiful eyes that seemed to shift color in the light. And what about what I want? What do you want, Jake? That was the question, wasn't it? What did he want? He thought about the past 3 days. Having Zara around had been like having a constant source of energy in his quiet cabin. She challenged him, made him see his own world through completely different eyes. She was dangerous and beautiful, and unlike anyone he'd ever met. But she was also an alien warrior who could kill him without breaking a sweat, who came from a culture he barely understood, who was asking him to make a life-changing decision based on 3 days of conversation. I need to understand what I'd be getting into, Jake said finally. What does being your mate actually mean? It means you become part of Kithara society, but as my equal, not my subordinate. It means I teach you our ways and you teach me yours. It means we face whatever comes next together. And physically? A slow smile spread across Zara's face. Kithara are very passionate beings, Jake. I would make sure you were satisfied in every way. Jake felt heat rise in his cheeks. That's not what I meant. I meant, am I safe? Are you going to accidentally hurt me because you're stronger than I am? Never. The word was fierce, absolute. A Kithara female never harms her chosen mate. It goes against our most basic instincts. What about children? Is that even possible? We will not know until we try, but there are stories of successful bondings between Kithara and other species. Zara reached out and touched his hand. Jake, I cannot promise you a normal life. What I offer is adventure, challenge, and complete devotion from a being who has never wanted anything the way I want you. Jake stared down at their joined hands. Her skin was warm and strange and somehow perfect against his. Why me? He asked. You could have anyone. Someone stronger, more exciting, more like a Kithara male? Someone who would submit to my dominance without question? Zara shook her head. That is not what I want. You are gentle, but not weak. Intelligent, but not arrogant. You choose kindness over strength, but you are braver than you know. How can you be sure about that? Because you saved me when you could have walked away. Because you welcomed a dangerous alien into your home. Because you are considering this impossible choice instead of running away screaming. Jake laughed despite himself. Maybe I should be running away screaming. But you are not. No, I'm not. They sat in silence for several minutes, Jake's hand still in hers, both of them lost in thought. If I say yes, Jake said finally, what happens next? We perform the bonding ritual. It is simple, an exchange of promises and a physical connection that seals our bond. Then I send word to my people that I have claimed a mate and will not be returning. And they'll accept that? They have no choice. It is our law. What about your mission? Your career as a huntress? Zara was quiet for a long moment. I have been a warrior my entire life, Jake. I have seen 100 worlds and fought 1,000 battles, but I have never felt at peace until these past 3 days with you. You'd give all that up? For me? I am not giving it up. I am trading one kind of life for another. A better one. Jake looked around his small cabin, trying to imagine sharing it permanently with this incredible, impossible woman. Trying to imagine a future filled with the unknown, with adventure, with someone who looked at him like he was the most important thing in the universe. It was terrifying. It was crazy. It was also the most tempting thing anyone had ever offered him. Zara, he said slowly, if we do this, there's no going back, is there? No. The bond once made cannot be broken. And you're absolutely sure this is what you want? I have never been more certain of anything in my life. Jake took a deep breath, looked into those shifting silver eyes, and made a decision that would change everything. Okay, he said. Yes, I choose you too. Zara's face lit up with a joy so pure and bright that it took Jake's breath away. Then she leaned forward and kissed him. And Jake discovered that alien kisses were definitely different from human ones. Better, actually. Much better. When they finally broke apart, Zara rested her forehead against his. You will not regret this, Jake, she whispered. I promise you that. Jake looked into her eyes and realized he believed her completely. So, he said, trying to keep his voice steady, how exactly does this bonding ritual work? Zara's smile turned predatory again, but this time Jake wasn't afraid of it. This time he was looking forward to finding out what it. Jake thought the bonding ritual would be the most intense experience of his life. He was wrong. It had been beautiful and strange, and unlike anything he could have imagined. Zara had explained each step as they went through it, making promises in her own language while teaching him to make similar promises in English. There had been a moment when their hands touched and something like electricity passed between them, and Jake could swear he felt something fundamental change inside him. But all of that seemed like a distant dream now, because 3 days later, Jake was hiding in his own basement while alien warriors searched his house. It started with Zara going rigid during breakfast. They are here, she had whispered, her head tilted like she was listening to something Jake couldn't hear. Who's here? My people. A search team. Zara was already moving toward the window, her body shifting into that predatory alertness Jake had learned to recognize. They must have tracked my ship's repair signals. I thought they believed you were dead. They did. But Kithara are thorough. They would send a recovery team for my ship regardless. Zara cursed in her own language, a sound that was both musical and terrifying. I did not expect them so soon. Jake joined her at the window. In the distance, he could see something that looked like a black disk hovering above the trees where Zara's ship was hidden. It was perfectly silent, which somehow made it more frightening than if it had been roaring like a jet engine. What do we do? You hide. Now. Zara turned to him, and Jake was shocked by the fear in her eyes. Not fear for herself, fear for him. Jake, if they find you, they will take you for study. The Kithara have never encountered a bonded human before. What about you? I will face whatever punishment they deem appropriate for my choice. No. The word came out harder than Jake intended. We're in this together now, remember? That's what bonding means. Zara stared at him for a moment, then smiled. The first genuine smile he'd seen since she'd detected the ship. You continue to surprise me, Jake. But this is not a battle you can help me fight. Maybe not, but I'm not hiding while you face them alone. Before Zara could argue, the front door exploded inward. Jake had seen Zara move fast before, but the being that stepped through the destroyed doorway made her look slow. It was clearly Kithara, but different from Zara. Taller, broader, with skin that looked like it was made of polished metal instead of pearl. The newcomer's eyes swept the room and locked onto Zara immediately. Huntress Zara, the being said, and even though they spoke English, their voice had a quality that made Jake's bones ache. You were reported deceased. Commander Thane, Zara replied. and Jake could hear the military formality creeping into her voice. I survived the crash and have been recovering. 2 more Kithara entered behind the commander. These looked more like Zara, but carried weapons that hummed with energy. Jake had a sinking feeling that hiding wasn't going to be an option. Your ship's logs show that you have been in communication with our command for several days, Commander, Thane continued. Yet you failed to request immediate extraction. Explain. I was evaluating the local situation. For 3 days? The native species proved more complex than initial reports suggested. Commander Thane's gaze shifted slightly, and Jake realized with a chill that the alien commander was looking directly at him despite Jake being partially hidden behind the kitchen counter. Indeed, Thane said slowly. Step into view, human. Immediately. Jake looked at Zara, who gave him a barely perceptible nod. Heart pounding, he stood up and moved to where all 3 aliens could see him clearly. Fascinating, one of the other Kithara said, studying Jake like he was a particularly interesting insect. It appears almost identical to our preliminary observations. Commander, Zara said, and something in her tone made Jake's stomach drop. I must inform you that this human and I have undergone the bonding. The silence that followed was so complete that Jake could hear his own heartbeat. Commander Thane's expression didn't change, but the 2 warriors behind him shifted their grips on their weapons. Repeat that statement, Thane said quietly. I have chosen this human as my mate according to Kithara law. We are bonded. You bonded with a primitive species, without authorization, without genetic compatibility testing, without consideration for the consequences to our people. It wasn't a question. Jake could feel the anger rolling off the commander in waves, even though their expression remained neutral. The bonding was properly conducted according to all traditional requirements, Zara replied firmly. I acted within my rights as a Kithara female. Your rights do not extend to compromising the security of our species by bonding with an untested alien. Jake is not a threat to our security. That is not for you to determine. Thane's attention shifted to Jake. Human, you will come with us for evaluation and study. No, Zara said, stepping protectively in front of Jake. He is my bonded mate. He is under my protection. Your protection means nothing if you are stripped of your rank and exiled. Jake had heard enough. These aliens were talking about him like he wasn't even there, discussing his future like he had no say in it. Worse, they were threatening Zara for the crime of choosing to be with him. Excuse me, Jake said, stepping around Zara despite her attempts to keep him behind her. I can speak for myself. Commander Thane looked amused. The primitive wishes to communicate. The primitive has a name. It's Jake, and I have something to say about all this. Jake, Zara warned quietly. Do not provoke them. But Jake was beyond caring about provocation. You want to take me away for study? Fine. But first you should know what you're really dealing with. And what is that? You're not just dealing with one human. You're dealing with a human who's been learning Kithara combat techniques for 3 days. The 2 warriors behind Thane actually laughed. Commander, one of them said, the creature believes 3 days of training makes it dangerous. More than that, Jake continued, you're dealing with a human who's bonded to the best huntress in your military. Someone who chose to stay here instead of returning to you. That should tell you something about how we compare to your own males. The laughter stopped. Furthermore, Jake said, warming to his theme and desperately hoping he was right about what he was about to say. According to what Zara's told me about your laws, you can't actually take me anywhere. I'm her bonded mate, which means I have the same legal protections as any Kithara spouse. Commander Thane's eyes narrowed. You have been studying our laws. Enough to know that if you want to take me, you'll have to fight Zara for the right. And if you want to punish her for bonding with me, you'll have to prove that I'm unworthy according to your traditions. Jake felt Zara's hand slip into his, squeezing gently. When he glanced at her, she was looking at him with something like amazement. The human shows more backbone than expected, Thane admitted. Very well. You wish to invoke the right of challenge? If that's what it takes to protect my mate, then yes. Jake, Zara whispered, Do you understand what you are asking for? Probably. Not completely. But I understand that I'm not going to let them take you away from me without a fight. Commander Thane studied them both for a long moment. This is highly irregular. A bonded human invoking Kithra law. But not illegal, Zara pointed out. No, not illegal. Thane sighed, a sound like wind through metal. Very well. The challenge will take place at dawn tomorrow. You will have until then to prepare. What kind of challenge? Jake asked. Combat. You and your mate against myself and one chosen warrior. If you prevail, your bonding will be recognized and you will both be granted the freedom to live as you choose. If you lose. We won't lose, Jake said with more confidence than he felt. If you lose, Thane continued as if Jake hadn't spoken, Zara will be stripped of her rank and exiled, and you will be taken for study. And if we refuse the challenge, then we take you both immediately. Jake looked at Zara. Well, when you put it that way, it's not really a choice. No, she agreed. It is not, Commander Thane nodded approvingly. Perhaps there is more to this species than we initially believed. We will make camp near your crashed vessel. At first light, we will return for the challenge. The three Kithra turned and walked out through the broken doorway, leaving Jake and Zara alone in the wreckage of his quiet life. Well, Jake said after a moment, that could have gone better. Jake, Zara said seriously, you do realize that Commander Thane is one of the finest warriors our people have ever produced? Yeah, I kind of figured that out from the way everyone was acting. And you still challenged them to combat? I challenged them to combat with the finest warrior their people have ever produced fighting beside me. Zara stared at him for a moment, then threw back her head and laughed, a sound of pure joy that filled Jake's ruined living room. You are either the bravest human who ever lived, she said, or the most foolish. Probably both. So how exactly do we win this thing? Zara's expression grew serious. We use every advantage we have. Your intelligence, my skills, and the fact that we fight as one unit while they fight as individuals. Can we actually win? I do not know. But Jake, regardless of what happens tomorrow, I want you to know that I have never been more proud to call someone my mate. Jake pulled her close, breathing in her strange, wonderful scent. Tomorrow they would face an impossible challenge against aliens. Jake hadn't slept a minute, but he felt more awake than he had in his entire life. He and Zara had spent the night preparing for the challenge in ways that made absolutely no logical sense. Instead of training or planning strategy, they had talked. About everything. About their hopes, their fears, their dreams for a future they might not live to see. Tell me about your world, Jake had said as they sat together on his couch, watching the stars through his broken door. So Zara had painted pictures with her words of crystal cities and purple skies, of hunts across landscapes that looked like something from a dream. She told him about the time she had tracked a shadow beast through 3 different dimensions, and the first time she had seen a sunrise from the deck of a starship. In return, Jake had told her about growing up in a small town, about learning to code when he was 12, about the day he decided to leave everything behind and move to this cabin in the mountains. I was looking for peace, he had said. Instead, I found you. Are you disappointed? Are you kidding? This is the greatest adventure of my life. Now, as the first light of dawn crept through the trees, Jake stood beside Zara in the clearing, where her ship had crashed 5 days ago. 5 days. Had it really only been 5 days since his world had turned upside down? The ship was gone now, taken back to the Kithera vessel that hung silently above the tree line. In its place was a circle of smooth metal that had been placed on the ground. Apparently, this was a traditional Kithera combat arena. Commander Thane stood on the opposite side of the circle with another warrior Jake hadn't seen before. This one was smaller than Thane, but moved with a fluid grace that reminded Jake uncomfortably of a snake. Are you ready? Zara asked quietly. No, Jake said honestly, but let's do this anyway. They stepped into the circle together. Immediately, Jake felt something change. The air felt thicker, more charged, like the moment before a lightning strike. "The challenge begins now," Commander Thane announced. "Combat will continue until one side yields or is unable to continue." "What are the rules?" Jake called out. "There are no rules," the snake-like warrior replied. "There is only victory or defeat." "That's what I was afraid of." The attack came without warning. One moment, the Kithara warriors were standing 20 feet away. The next, they were moving so fast they were barely visible, closing the distance in the time it took Jake to blink. But Zara had been expecting this. She met Commander Thane's charge head-on, and the sound of their collision was like thunder. They moved together in a deadly dance, trading blows that would have shattered human bones. That left Jake facing the other warrior, who was approaching him with the confident air of someone about to swat a particularly annoying fly. 3 days of training with Zara had taught Jake one important thing. He couldn't match a Kithara 4E, speed or strength. But he could think, and he could adapt. As the warrior lunged for him, Jake didn't try to meet the attack. Instead, he dropped to the ground and rolled, using his smaller size to slip beneath the alien's reaching arms. As he rolled, he grabbed a handful of dirt and rocks from the ground. The warrior spun to face him, clearly confused by this ungraceful but effective evasion. "Is this what passes for combat among your species?" the alien sneered. "No," Jake said, throwing the dirt directly into the warrior's eyes. "This is what passes for survival." The alien was blinded for only a moment, but that was long enough for Jake to put the second part of his plan into action. He couldn't overpower a Kithara, but he had noticed something during their preparation. All of Zara's incredible speed and strength came from perfect balance and precise control. Disrupt the balance, and even the strongest warrior became vulnerable. Jake dove not at the warrior, but at their legs, hitting them low and from the side in a move that would have been called a tackle in football. The alien went down hard, more from surprise than from the impact itself. But Jake wasn't done. Before the warrior could recover, he wrapped his arms around their legs and held on for dear life. "Zara!" he called out. "Little help here." Zara, who was still locked in combat with Commander Thane, somehow managed to break away long enough to land, a devastating kick to Jake's opponent. The warrior went limp. One down, one to go. But Commander Thane was not like the other warrior. Where the first alien had been fast and graceful, Thane was fast and brutal. Even with Jake's unconventional tactics helping to distract and confuse, their opponent Zara was clearly being pushed to her limits. Jake circled around behind Thane looking for an opening. He found it when the commander overextended on a particularly powerful attack. Jake jumped onto Thane's back, wrapping his arms around the alien's neck. He couldn't choke a Kithara. Their physiology was too different from human. But he could be annoying and distracting, which was apparently enough. With Jake clinging to their back like an angry monkey, Commander Thane couldn't focus entirely on fighting Zara. And with Zara's full attention freed up to attack instead of just defend, the tide of the battle began to turn. It ended with Thane on the ground, Zara's foot on their chest, and Jake still wrapped around the commander's neck like the world's most determined backpack. "Yield," Zara said quietly. For a moment, Commander Thane just stared up at her. Then, incredibly, they began to laugh. "Release me, human," Thane said. Jake cautiously unwrapped his arms and rolled away. Thane sat up, rubbing their neck. "In 300 years of combat, I have never been defeated by someone who fought by clinging to me like a child." "Sorry about that," Jake said. "I was working with what I had." "Do not apologize. It was